Under the golden glow of the late afternoon sun, Emily Carter stepped out of the taxi, her eyes glistening with nostalgia as she gazed at the house where she had grown up. After years away, she had finally returned from Japan, carrying the excitement of rekindling childhood memories tied to this land. But the peace she had imagined was shattered in an instant. Before her stood not the lush green garden or the flower beds her grandmother had so lovingly tended, but a cemetery stretching across the entire backyard. Rows of cold, gray tombstones covered the very ground where she had once played as a child. A wave of unease tightened in her chest. Clutching the handle of her suitcase, she hurried toward the wooden fence, scanning the scene as if hoping she had somehow misunderstood. But no, the graves were real. The soil was fresh, and workers in reflective vests continued their digging. One of them paused, lifting his gaze toward her with a hesitant expression. But before Emily could utter a word, a cold, sharp voice rang out from behind her. "Emily Carter, isn't it?" Emily turned, coming face to face with Karen Mitchell, a middle-aged woman clad in a sleek business suit, her short hair styled to perfection. Behind her dark sunglasses, her eyes gleamed with a calculated sharpness, and the smirk on her lips was nothing short of condescending. Emily recognized her immediately, the president of the Homeowners Association, HOA, the very woman who had long clashed with her family over property rights. "What the hell is going on here?" Emily gritted her teeth, gripping the strap of her bag tightly. Karen let out an exaggerated sigh, folding her arms. "We decided to restructure this area for the benefit of the community. After you left, there was no one managing the property, so we seized the opportunity to repurpose it as a public cemetery. Everything has been done legally." Legally? Blood pounded in Emily's temples. She had been gone less than 3 years, and they had stolen her backyard without so much as a warning. She bit her lip, forcing herself to stay calm. "You can't do this without my consent. This land belongs to my family." Karen shrugged, utterly unfazed. "All the paperwork has been processed. If you have an issue, I suggest you speak with a lawyer." Emily needed no further provocation. She took a step back, her gaze sweeping over the gravestones once more. But this time, something caught her attention. The workers weren't just digging to place headstones. They were excavating something. The uneasy feeling inside her deepened. Something was very, very wrong, and she wasn't leaving until she found out the truth. Darkness descended, casting a somber veil over the newly established cemetery in Emily Carter's backyard. She stood frozen on the wooden steps, her gaze fixed on the workers who continued to dig. But instead of merely placing headstones, they seemed to be searching for something else, an unsettling mystery she could not ignore. Suspicion grew within Emily as childhood memories resurfaced. This very land was where her grandfather had once told her cryptic stories about his past, stories that, as a child, she had dismissed as mere fables. But now, watching these men furtively working under the glare of floodlights, those stories suddenly felt far more real. Taking a deep breath, she turned and hurried inside. She yanked open an old storage cabinet, rummaging through dust-covered boxes until she found it. A wooden chest her grandmother had always told her contained her grandfather's most important belongings. Emily unlatched the lid, and inside was a stack of old documents, their pages yellowed with age. As she flipped through them, she discovered intricate blueprints, complex mathematical formulas, and hastily scribbled notes in her grandfather's handwriting. Reading further, she froze. Her grandfather had not been an ordinary engineer. He had worked on a classified government research project. His notes described advanced surveillance and investigative technologies, capable of detecting anomalies from great distances and even reconstructing crime scenes with unprecedented accuracy. Then she found a letter, scrawled in urgent handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I am no longer here. But there are things I could not allow to fall into the hands of the greedy. You must protect it, Emily. Don't let them bury the truth." Her heart pounded as she looked up. Who were they? The government, a secret organization, or the Homeowners Association, HOA, led by Karen Mitchell? Suddenly, a thunderous noise erupted from the backyard. Emily dashed outside, only to freeze in shock as a team of FBI agents swarmed her property. The workers abandoned their tools, some attempting to flee, but they were quickly subdued. A tall man in a dark trench coat approached her, flashing his badge. "We have orders to secure this area. As of now, this is no longer private property, Miss Carter." Emily felt the world around her crumble. They knew. The FBI had come for whatever her grandfather had hidden. But more importantly, what right did they have to take it? Her fists clenched at her sides. If they thought they could steal her family's legacy so easily, they had made a grave mistake. The piercing wail of sirens shattered the silence of the night. Flashing red and blue lights cast eerie shadows over the newly erected tombstones in Emily Carter's backyard. She stood motionless on the porch, her heart pounding wildly as she watched FBI agents swarm the area, sealing off the entire cemetery with yellow caution tape. The workers were ordered to step aside. Some resisted, but they were quickly subdued. A tall agent, clad in a sharp black suit, approached Emily and pulled out a badge. "Agent Daniel Sterling, FBI. This area is now under federal control." Emily blinked, feeling as if she had been struck. "Sealed off? This is my home," she snapped, her sharp gaze locking onto the agent's impassive face. Sterling remained unfazed. "We have reason to believe that this property contains classified U.S. government documents that were hidden decades ago." A cold chill ran down Emily's spine. They knew. The FBI knew about her grandfather's documents, or at the very least, they suspected something. But how? Who had tipped them off? The HOA Karen Mitchell? Suddenly, another team of agents arrived with metal detectors scanning the ground. Moments later, an excavator was brought in, and within minutes, they began digging in the very spot where the HOA workers had previously been secretly unearthing something. Emily clenched her fists. She wanted to rush forward to stop them, but an agent blocked her path. "You are not permitted to enter this area. Please step back." She gritted her teeth, a wave of helpless frustration surging within her. There was nothing she could do but watch as her family's legacy was unearthed under the blinding glare of government floodlights. Then one of the agents knelt beside the excavation site, carefully lifting a weathered metal box, its faded paint peeling with age. A hush fell over the scene as Sterling gave the order to open it. Inside was a thick stack of aged documents, the pages brittle with time. But what truly caught everyone's attention were the intricate blueprints, designs for a technology unlike anything they had ever seen. An agent flipped through the files, his expression darkening. "This is surveillance technology. My God, these are the prototypes we're using today." Emily inhaled sharply, stepping back. Advanced surveillance technology. These documents weren't just her grandfather's legacy. They could be the foundation of the entire investigative system that the FBI had been using for years. Her fists tightened. If that was true, then the FBI wasn't just here to reclaim the documents. They were here to make sure she could never lay claim to what rightfully belonged to her family. But she wouldn't let them, not without a fight. Morning had fully broken, but Emily Carter's anger had not faded. She stood at her front door, staring out at the FBI-sealed backyard, where agents continued to excavate and analyze her grandfather's documents. What rightfully belonged to her family was now in the hands of the government, without a single explanation or any acknowledgement of her rights. Taking a deep breath, she turned and strode toward the front of the house. There, a luxury car sat idling, and Karen Mitchell stood beside it, arms crossed. The middle-aged woman still wore her usual composed expression, but this time, Emily detected a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. "Well, you look tense, Emily," Karen said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I suppose you didn't see this coming." Emily clenched her fists. "You tipped off the FBI, didn't you?" Karen shrugged, her smirk unwavering. "I simply did what was best for the community. You know, your grandfather's documents should never have been in private hands. They belong to the government." Emily let out a cold chuckle, fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. "Spare me the righteous act. You don't care about the community. You only care about yourself. If you did, why were you in such a rush to turn my backyard into a cemetery the moment I left?" Karen blinked, but quickly regained her poise. "As I've already said, everything was done legally. You're welcome to check the paperwork." Emily took a slow, deliberate step closer, her voice razor-sharp. "Oh, I will check. But not just the paperwork. I'll be looking into the HOA's financial records. I want to know exactly how much was spent on this so-called cemetery, who authorized it, and more importantly, who got paid to stay quiet. For the first time, Karen's expression faltered. You're grasping at straws. Emily tilted her head. Am I? Then you wouldn't mind if I hire an independent auditor to investigate, would you? Karen's eyes narrowed, the smirk fading from her lips. You're playing with fire, Emily. You have more to lose than you realize. Emily let out a slow, cold breath. And you think that'll scare me? This is my home. This is my family. And I will not let anyone, including you, take what rightfully belongs to me. Karen remained silent for a long moment, then sighed, regaining her usual composed demeanor. You can try, Emily, but legal battles take time. And money. I don't think you have enough of either. Emily met her gaze without flinching. You'd be surprised. Karen studied her for another moment, then turned on her heel and slipped into her car. As the vehicle pulled away, Emily stood firm, fingers clenched, her eyes burning with determination. The real battle had only just begun. The flash of cameras lit up the courtroom. Reporters jostled for position, their cameras clicking furiously. The room was packed with journalists and spectators, all eager to witness the verdict. At the front, Emily Carter stood firm behind the plaintiff's table, her gaze sharp, unwavering. Across from her, Karen Mitchell sat alongside her team of attorneys, her face stiff with tension, yet still wearing a mask of arrogance. This was no longer just Emily's battle. This was a citizen versus a corrupt organization, one that had manipulated the law in the shadows for far too long. Court is now in session. The judge's gavel struck. Emily's attorney, Daniel Stevenson, rose to his feet and strode to the center of the courtroom, his voice ringing with authority. Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that the Homeowners Association, HOA, under the leadership of Karen Mitchell, has engaged in a series of illegal activities, including unlawful land seizure and bribery to cover up classified government documents. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Karen sat motionless, arms crossed, but her attorneys exchanged frantic whispers. HOA's lead attorney stood abruptly, scoffing. Your Honor, these accusations are completely baseless. The HOA has conducted all its operations in accordance with legal procedures. If Miss Carter has issues with community redevelopment, she should have taken it up with local authorities rather than fabricating this absurd lawsuit. Emily clenched her fists, but she didn't need to speak. Daniel simply nodded and turned toward the courtroom's large screen. With a click of a button, the video began to play. On the screen, grainy footage revealed HOA workers digging under the cover of night. Then, Karen's voice rang out clearly. We need to clear it out before anyone finds out. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Karen Mitchell went pale. Emily didn't blink, her gaze locked onto the woman who had destroyed her family's legacy. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Mrs. Mitchell, would you care to explain why an HOA would conduct secret excavations in the middle of the night without notifying the legal property owner? Karen opened her mouth, but no words came out, and there was more. Daniel stepped forward, laying a stack of confidential financial documents on the table. The screen changed to display bank records, large sums of money funneled into the HOA from a shell company with ties to government officials. Where did this money go, Mrs. Mitchell? The room plunged into silence. Karen's hands clenched into fists, her posture rigid like a trapped animal. Emily inhaled deeply and turned to the jury. All I want is justice. This isn't just a piece of land. This is my family's legacy. My grandfather worked to protect a piece of history that the government wanted to erase. I won't let them take that away. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then, the judge banged his gavel. This court finds the HOA and Karen Mitchell legally responsible for the unlawful seizure of private property and the obstruction of justice. Ownership of the land and all related documents is hereby restored to Emily Carter. A wave of applause erupted. Emily closed her eyes, the weight of victory settling over her. This wasn't just a legal ruling. It was a declaration of justice. Karen Mitchell, now nothing more than a disgraced figure, was escorted out in handcuffs while reporters surged forward, eager to capture the moment. Emily lifted her head, drawing in a deep, steady breath. She had won justice for her family, and this victory would stand as a warning to anyone who dared to bury the truth. The courtroom erupted into a flurry of whispers and murmurs. Journalists scrambled to snap photos and record every moment, while the jury engaged in urgent discussion. At the center of it all, Karen Mitchell sat frozen, her face drained of color, her entire body stiff as a statue. Gone was the arrogance, the slick justifications. She was now a cornered figure, with nowhere left to run. "Your Honor, please listen to me. This isn't how it seems." Karen shot up from her seat, her voice laced with desperation. But the judge slammed his gavel against the bench. "Mrs. Mitchell, if you interrupt again, I will have you removed from this courtroom immediately." Karen swallowed hard, her fingers digging into the arms of her chair, her frantic eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. But no one stood by her side anymore. Across the room, Emily Carter remained silent, her heart pounding. Not with fear, but with the certainty that victory was within reach. Attorney Daniel Stevenson rose, his voice steady yet razor-sharp, slicing through the last remnants of HOA's deception. "Your Honor, we have presented undeniable evidence. The Homeowners Association, HOA, under the leadership of Karen Mitchell, has not only engaged in illegal land seizures, but has also colluded with government officials to cover up classified information and exploit their power for personal gain." The large screen at the front of the courtroom flickered to life. A series of leaked internal emails appeared. Lines of text revealed Karen and HOA board members discussing the hush money they had received in exchange for keeping the backyard excavation a secret. The entire room fell silent. Some HOA members lowered their heads in shame, while Karen gasped, her hands trembling as she clutched at her blouse. The judge's expression remained stern, his voice carrying the weight of the final judgment. "The Homeowners Association has committed severe violations of the law. This court officially dissolves the HOA and orders a full investigation into its financial records and unlawful activities." He turned to Karen. "Mrs. Karen Mitchell." Karen went rigid. "You are hereby placed under arrest for corruption, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice." The whispers erupted into chaos. Karen lunged forward, her face ghostly pale, her voice shrieking in panic. "No, I wasn't the only one. They were involved too. They let me do this." She flung a shaking hand toward the government officials seated at the back of the courtroom, but not a single one of them looked her way. One by one, they turned away, distancing themselves as if they had never known her. Two officers stepped forward, snapping handcuffs onto her wrists. As they led her away, Karen twisted back, her eyes burning with hatred as they locked onto Emily. "You think you've won? You think you can fight the system?" Emily didn't blink. She stood tall, her voice calm yet unyielding. "I don't need to fight the system. I only need justice." Karen screamed, but the officers dragged her out of the courtroom. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them, marking the end of the HOA's corrupt reign. Emily closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. It was over. The HOA was no more. Justice had prevailed. But she knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a new journey, one where she would take control of her own destiny, ensuring that no one could ever bury the truth again. A gentle breeze swept across the backyard, swirling the fallen leaves in delicate spirals over the ground. The land that had once been the battleground of a legal war was now restored to its rightful owner. Emily Carter stood still, silently observing. The area that had been wrongfully turned into a cemetery had been cleared. No more hastily erected tombstones, no more workers digging for buried secrets. Now, it belonged to her and her family once more. In her hands, she held a small metal box, something the FBI had reluctantly returned after the court ruling. Inside were the blueprints and research papers her grandfather had hidden for decades. These were not just records of an advanced surveillance technology. They were the Carter family's legacy, a piece of history that had been buried and nearly stolen. Beyond the gates, reporters stood waiting, eager for a statement from the woman who had single-handedly brought down one of the most powerful HOAs. But Emily paid them no mind. She had a new story to write, one of her own making. A voice broke through the quiet. "What do you plan to do with it?" Emily turned to see attorney Daniel Stevenson standing there, hands tucked into the pockets of his coat. The man who had helped her win the case, who had exposed the truth the government had tried to bury. She glanced down at the box, then smiled slightly. "I won't sell it, and I won't hand it over to the government." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Then what's your plan?" Emily took a deep breath, her gaze lifting toward the horizon. "I'm going to build something. A place where this technology can be used with transparency, without being manipulated by those in power." Daniel chuckled. "You're thinking about taking on the system, aren't you?" Emily shrugged, her eyes burning with quiet determination. "I'm not here to fight the system. I just want to make sure that no one can ever bury the truth again." From a distance, the sound of cars hummed in the background, a quiet signal that one chapter had closed, while another was just beginning. Emily turned and stepped inside her house, knowing that she was about to write a new story, not just for herself, but for the generations to come. She had reclaimed justice for her family. Now, it was time to build her own future. Emily Carter's journey is more than just a story of justice. It is a powerful reminder that truth always holds value and cannot remain buried forever. In life, we often find ourselves caught in unfair situations, where those in power manipulate, conceal the truth, and exploit the vulnerable. But Emily's story teaches us that as long as we persist and stand firm in integrity, justice will eventually prevail. For older generations, those who have lived through countless trials and changes in society, this lesson carries even deeper meaning. We may have witnessed injustices that were never corrected, wrongs that were never made right, but that does not mean we must resign ourselves to them. The perseverance of a single individual can spark great change, and it is the timeless values of honesty, patience, and responsibility that must be preserved and passed down to future generations. This story also serves as a reminder that a family's legacy is not just about material wealth. It is about the values, lessons, and truths we leave behind for our children and grandchildren. To protect a legacy is not just to safeguard land or documents, but to uphold the principles and ideals that our families have built over generations. The fight for justice is never easy, but it is always worth it.